Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Quantitative History webinar. I'm Sijie, and it is a great pleasure for me to be today's moderator. And similar to last week, today we are also hosting another session of the QH Doctoral Research webinar. So this is a special series that we designed to provide PhD candidates with a platform to share their exciting research projects. And we are very pleased today to have Mr. Xinxian Li with us today. And Xinxian is a PhD candidate at HKU Business School. And today he will present his new paper on the female labor participation in early industrial Japan. And we are very looking forward to Xinxian's presentation today. And we are also very honored today to have Professor Tokihiko Setsu, Professor of Economics at Musashi University, with us as our discussant today. And Professor Setsu, and we believe that with Professor Setsu's expertise in Japanese economic history, and especially in the study of occupational structure and also labor participation, will definitely provide with us a lot of new valuable insights for today's discussion. And in terms of the structure, Xinxian will deliver about a 1 hour presentation and then followed by a 10 to 15-minute discussion by Professor Setsu. And then finally, we will open the floor for a 10-minute Q&A session. And so for our audience, please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we will then relay as many as possible of the questions to Xinxian in the Q&A session. Okay, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Xinxian. And Xinxian, the floor is yours.
So thank you very much for Professor Hu's introduction. Now I'm going to share my screen. So I'm going to, hello, my name is Xinxian Li, and currently I'm the PhD candidate in economics from the University of Hong Kong. And thank you very much for Professor Hu's introduction. And today it's my honor to be here to give this presentation to share with you one of my research work. The title of this research work is Weaving a Modern Workforces, How Female Industrial Pioneers Refine Women's Economic Law in Japan. So this paper mainly focuses on how the first cohort of industrial women in Japan affected the female labor force dynamics. Let me start with the motivation of this research. The advent of economic opportunities can clash with the existing social norms, and the early industrialization just provided examples. On one hand, industrializations, particularly the growth of the textile industries, particularly in textile industries, the industrializations created new factory jobs that offered women individuals wages for the first time. So this represents a new economic opportunities. And this kind of individual or independent wages representing a potential path to economic independence for women. But on the other hand, this economic opportunity directly conflicted with the existing traditional social norms. Those traditional social norms were largely inherited from the agrarian economic models that confine women to the domestic sphere. So the adoption of these new economic laws for women was not automatic. The transitions must involve significant frictions and adjustment. So these questions, so this paper just ask questions: what facilitated the transition for women from domestic spheres to the modern industrial work? So this paper just proposed that the first cohort of industrial work were the critical catalyst among these transitions. Those first cohort of female industrial workers, they could facilitate these transitions mainly through two mechanisms. The first mechanisms are just roughly called as a social learning effect. Through social learning, these pioneers could spread crucial information for those potential entrepreneurs. Those informations could help them to the benefits of a potential of those new industrial methods. So this could further spur the creations of new factory jobs. But for the other women, those female pioneers can also demonstrate the tangible benefits of those financial, like the independent wages. So this making the prospecting of leaving home for a job more attractive for other women. On the other hand, those female pioneers can also act as role models. This was fulfilled because they by helping normalizing the idea of a woman working outside the domestic sphere, and this could lower the social and identity-related cost for subsequent generations of women to enter the workforces. And furthermore, their examples can also encourage other women to aspire to the new economic laws and the opportunities. And this paper just to test the effect of those pioneers by utilizing the historical contexts in Japan. Specifically, I examined the first cohort of female industrial workers in Japan's history who come from the Tomioka Silk Mill, Japan's first modern factory. This factory was established in 1872. So these women, this first cohort of female industrial workers are significant because they play two roles in the transition from agrarian to the industrial economy. The first law is that they play a role as a technical pioneers. They were specifically trained in this mill and back to their hometown to diffuse the mechanized circuit railing back to their hometown. In this sense, I would like to call them as the technical pioneers. On the other hand, those females were the first cohort of women left their home and enter into the factories. So they could challenge the traditional social norms and set a new precedent for women's role in the modern economy. So this paper just examines their effect on the transition of women into modern workforces. Here are the summary of the main findings of this research. In the short term, in 1920, I found an effect that they catalyzed structure shifts in their hometown, in the hometowns of those first female industrial workers. Their hometown saw higher female labor force participation in industrial and service, but not agriculture. So also, they observed the increases in those three sectors and lead to a total expansion of the female labor force participation among all sectors. So it means that this kind of increases was not due to the reallocations from work from the reallocation of work from agriculture to industrial service. And for this short-term effect, I identified two mechanisms. The first mechanism is the knowledge diffusion. Those female pioneers, when they back to their hometown, they diffuse the mechanized circuit railing knowledge, and this facilitated the adoption of the establishment of mechanized circuit factories, and those mechanized circuit factories created more factories jobs for women. So this is the first mechanism. And for the second mechanism is that I found like those female pioneers, they act as the role models and they normalize work outside home and stimulate aspirations among their future generations. Apart from this short-term impact are also found a long-term persistence to today in 2000 year, and after nearly more than 1 century in 2000, and in those pioneers' hometown, those regions still saw higher female labor force participations. And this is especially more significant among the married women. And with the increases engagement of the female participation for women, and I also found the influences on marriage and the birth ratios. In these pioneers' hometowns, the marriage and the birth ratios were lower compared with other regions without historical presence of those female pioneers. And for these long-term persistent influences, I mainly identify the change in terms of gender attitudes as the mechanisms. Next part, I will talk about the contribution of this research. This paper mainly contributed to the growing literature discussing the impact of female role models. The previous, why previous study have a powerful demonstrate the influences of the female political leaders or female teachers, and even the very progressive female immediates. And this paper shift the focuses to historical settings, the female who are very important in economic modernization. And besides, this study examines the role model raising in a very critical juncture in history, just during the early stage of industrializations. In early industrializations was a pivotal moment when the societal norms and around the labors and gender were being fundamentally reshaped. So this made the influences of pioneers quite a patent, and that's also one reason why I can observe the long-term impact. Next part, let me talk about the historical background of this paper. And this picture just shows the Tomioka Silk Mill. It was a very complicated complexes dating back to later time in terms of the structure in Japan's history. This mill or this modern factory was established in 1872. It was regarded the modern driver in early Meiji time. During the early Meiji period, silk was a strategic product for modernizations. It can accounted for nearly half of Japan's total exports dating in the early Meiji time. So this high export of shelf silk was a windfall for Japan due to the silkworm disease in Europe and the Taiping Rebellion in China in 1850s. So this shock to the Europe and China created increases the demand for Japan's silk in international trade. But when Europe gradually recovered from the shock, and the Japanese silk started to lose its market advantage due to its low quality, because the majority of the silk dating back to later time in Japan was still, the majority of them was still hand reeling. So the quality was uneven, and there was no standard. To address this kind of a crisis, the Meiji government decided to promote the modern mechanized silk reeling to address this kind of a problem. Just against this background, the Tomioka Silk Mill was established. It was established with the modern technology imported from French, and the French engineers employed to this mill. When it was established in 1872, it was the largest silk mill around the world. So the location of this mill was in just Tomioka. Is very straightforward to know by its name, and the Tomioka is located in Guangma. Guangma is just the location is just around the center in Japan. Definitely the location of this mill was not for random. It accounted to several factors. The first reason is that Tomioka is close to Yokohama port. And the other reasons is that Tomioka, its location has a very reliable supply of a cocoon. Cocoon is just a raw material for silk, and also these places have a quite a good supply of water and coal for energy supply, and also the open ground to hold the Tomioka silk mill. These are very large complexes. And also another point is to make is that the criteria is that this region people should hosted should hold no hospitality towards the foreigners. So the mill's primary missions was not just productions, but disseminations to separate modern silk reeling skills across Japan. The government employment strategy to achieve this. They just recruit the young women around the countries to join this mill and training this mill for around like 1 to 3 years, and for about mastering the skills of mechanized silk reeling, and then send them back to their hometowns to serve as an instructor to disseminate the mechanized silk reeling knowledge. So when discussing those female pioneers, it's important to talk about the social norms in Japan in early Meiji period. Dating back to that time, public factory work was still a new concept. Because in the early Meiji time was just the end of just followed by the end of the Tokugawa period, and public factory work was not for women was still not something new. Japan's gender norms are dating back to that time, centering on the neo-Confucianism and the household systems. And these norms usually emphasize a female's subordination and confinement to domestic laws, and limited females' mobility, and emphasize the need for family oversight. This confinement is especially severe for samurai families. Adhering to those rules was regarded as a virtue. So, but working in this mill required a woman to move far from a home, living in a dormitory for quite a long time with people coming from different places. And more important, those women need to supervised by foreign males. So this is a totally new challenge for female dating back to that time, even for those agrarian females who used to have some like agricultural productions in Tokugawa period, but this kind of factory work was still something new to learn. So this work generated social anxiety. It was reflected by a prevalent rumor that French engineers in this mill drank the blood of those female workers. So this rumor was likely a misunderstanding of them drinking red wine. So red wine is also something new to Japanese people dating back to that time. So despite the Meiji government's plan, recruitment initially proved extremely difficult due to this rumor and then also the existing social norms. So few people answered the government's call to join this mill, despite when this mill offered around threefold wages of the normal standard. So even after the government clarifications efforts, the recruitment still remained a challenge. The situation's improvement when several figures voluntarily join the mill. So those volunteers include like Odaka Yu. She was the daughter of the Tomioka Silk Mill's managers, and also Wadae. She was the daughter of local officials. Their voluntary participation in this mill helped dispel the rumor and encourage their peers to join the mill. So the rationale between this kind of encouragement is like if the daughter of those families from very advantageous background to can join this mill. So this rumor must be something not real, is something must be a false. So this picture just show those female pioneers in the factory. So you could see their dress and also the environment. Dating back to like the time, working in this mill was indeed regarded to some jobs, some decent jobs compared with the working environment or payments in other places. These female pioneers hold significances mainly for those two reasons. The first reason is that they are technical pioneers. Those women mastered at a later time state-of-the-art mechanized silk reading techniques. So when they come back to their hometown, they can help to build to establish the mechanized silk factories and the silk. This industry was very important in Japan's industrialization process, and by 1930, the silk export of Japan can accounted to around 80% of the total international trade. So silk is very important in Japan's history. And here are several evidences showing that when those female came back to their hometown, they helped to help establish and contributed to the mechanized silk factory in their hometown. For example, here in the low 3, Matsushiro in Nagano, when the female worker came back to their hometown, she led the Lokusha silk mill. The Lokusha silk mill was the first private mechanized silk factory in Japan's history. Sorry. And then the second importance is that those pioneers, they can reshape the perceptions of the females, those when they came back to their hometowns. So their expertise gave them technical authority and the persuasive capabilities. So I mean, when they mastered those advanced state-of-the-art techniques, when they came back to like a town, they can reshape the perception of a woman's capability. And this paragraph just show an example. Wadae, when she came back to her hometown, and she became the trainer in the Lokusha mill, and she met the conflict with the male manager in terms of reading practices. She claimed to have a competition on which practice to use. Finally, the method she learned from the mill produces better silk, and she persuaded the male manager to use the new silk reading techniques. So this example just to show that when the woman mastering the new technology, it could improve their bargaining power. Even in textile industries, this industry usually employ a lot of women, but still, when the decision powers were still in hand of a lot of males. So indeed, this kind of knowledge can help them to gain the bargaining power. And there are also some evidences to show that communities recognize those women as local heroines who brought distinction to their hometowns and they recorded their contributions in the local history. So this cohort of industrial pioneers representing a potential turning point in Japan's female labor force evolution. They represented a transformation shift by moving from home-based to factory-based labor while simultaneously embracing modern technology. That is very crucial to Japan's industrial success. So this breakthrough raises a very fundamental questions. this warming establish a precedent for female labor force participations that far others follow? Let others subsequently followed in the silk industries, or even more broadly. Now I'm going to talk about the data part. So due to the data limitation, my main analysis can only focus on 3 historical Japanese prefectures, just showing in the left pictures, and the list red point denotes the location of Tomioka Silk Mill, and the blue color denotes the regions. The observation unit in this study, just the municipality with the presence of those female industrial pioneers. And the left picture just shows the distribution of the number of those female industrial pioneers in municipalities with the presence of those industries. You could see that the distribution is quite rather skewed. And the majority of those municipalities, they just have those industries less than 5. So to capture the influences of those female pioneers, I just use the dummy variable to denote the pioneer presences. So a dummy variable is something more adhere to the concept of the pioneering effect, the effect of the first one. Now I'm going to talk about my mean outcome variable. I construct my mean outcome variable using Japan's first national census conducted in 1920, and my mean variable is just the female labor force participation ratio. This was calculated by the female workforce's populations divided by total populations. I constructed 4 variables. The first one is the female industrial labor force participation rate. So this serves as the primary outcome, capturing the shift from domestic to modern industrial work. Since the industrial work was nearly non-existent in 1872 when the Tomioka Silk Mill was established. So this variable just measures the change of industrial female labor force participations from 1872 to 1920. So in the regression for this variable, the regression is approximate to the first difference estimator, so it can adjust for some like unobservable characteristics. The second variable is the agriculture female labor force participation rate. So this variable just checks the effect of traditional sectors, and it can test for a reallocation of a female worker from traditional sector to modern economic sector. And the third category is a surface. So this captures the spillover effect into other modern public facing laws. So the fourth category is the female labor force participation ratio in the total economy. So this measuring the aggregate effect to test for a next expansion of a total female labor force. In my regression analysis, I include several controls to account for potential confounding factors. For geographical conditions, I control for the terrain and the river density and the supervisor stability to account for influential for agriculture development and industrial potentials. I also accounted for a set of initial conditions, including assessed land value in 1869. So likely Kokodaka. So it's more like so this variable mainly capture the total wealth of a municipality, and also I can choose the production of cocoon and raw silk in 1876, assuming that because the variable in 1876 is still after the establishment of the Tomioka Silk Mill. So here I just assume that the effect of those pioneering filmmakers were not immediately. Due to data limitation, I cannot find the data earlier, before 1870 to 76. So let me represent my empirical results, and this table just shows my baseline results. You could see like in 1920, pioneers' presence in a municipality increases the industrial female labor force participation in column 1. So this is suggesting that they encourage the warming out of their home to modern economy. However, this effect, however, in column 2, we can see that the effect of agriculture, female labor force participation is insignificant. It's quite important. So because this helps to address the concern that the effect on industry was not largely was not due to some the prevalent local norms favoring to all kinds of work. If a lighter were true, we could very likely to observe lightly coefficient in column 2 is still like a positive and significant. And the current rate shows that they also catalyze and increases in surface sectors. And the column 4 shows that they lead to a net increases of female workforces in the 1920. So this suggests that the effect was not merely due to the reallocation of work from agriculture to industry, but due to a net expansion of the total workforce. However, despite of controlling for several factors, the OS estimate might still suffer from the omitted variable biases. For example, like the early initial silk initiatives, those regions planning to build silk mills, they are more likely to send warming all of the goods to the Tomioka Silk Mill. So but I cannot control for this kind of a factor. To address this concern, I just employ the IW estimation strategy. So recalling what I introduced in the historical background, the participation in this mill was largely was encouraged by two voluntary girls, that is Odaka Yu and Wada A. So I just capture instrument variable to capture their inferences. So the instrument variable just the distance to their hometown. This picture just shows the IV. So their hometown is the hometown for Wada is Matsushiro, and the hometown for Wada is the Shimotebaka. You could see like the distance to their hometown was not very directly correlated with the distance to Tomioka. So I also show like this IV was not correlated with a set of potential confounders like the population and also the facility, the social facility infrastructures like the number of temples, the number of schools, and also the number of hospitals. And also the distance to this mill was not correlated with like very important agriculture production like the rice and the miso and the soy sauce. The list table just shows the instrumented results. Column 1 is the first stage relation. First stage relationship is negative. For the second stage results, they are quite consistent with our OLS results. But you could see like converted to the OLS result. The inflation of a coefficient magnitude is around like a 3.5 fold on average. So this to explain this relatively large increases in terms of magnitude, I would like to argue for the local average treatment effect, because OL's result is the average treatment effect, but the IV capture the effect of those compliers. The complier, they could be those very traditional municipalities that were persuaded to send out pioneers only after seeing the only after seeing the influences of those voluntary girls. And in those regions, specific regions, we could very likely to expect the pioneers' role model effect could be larger in other municipalities. So you could see for our for my IW results, they are consistent with the OS results in terms of the sign. Still, the positive for industrial, negative and insignificant for agriculture, positive and more significant for surface and then total female labor force participation and net expansion. So under my IW results also survive a set of robustness tests. So let me to introduce those robustness tests. The first concern is that the result may be driven by the migration effect. There were quite a lot of factory towns in 1920. So a lot of girls and females just migrated to those regions to take the work. So to address this concern, I just include the additional control. The control is just the share of a local born population in 1920 with the inclusion of this variable. You could say that with the inclusion of this variable, the effect was still consistent with my mean IW results. And another concern is the effect, the observed effect may just due to the general modernization economic development in Japan, because it's due to the Meiji modernization restoration and following the modernization. To address this concern, I just add a variable for economic conditions, likely estimated growth product per effective labor. So you could say with this inclusion of economic conditions in 1920, the effects are still consistent with my mean results. Another concern is another concern. In the third robustness test, I directly control the distance to Tomioka Silk Mill. The distance to Tomioka Silk Mill is quite important because controlling this factor can isolating the effect from Tomioka Silk Mill, and also it can help to account to the potential advantages associated with the location of the Tomioka Silk Mill. And I also accounted for the distance to Suwa. Suwa is another very important locations for later industrialization development in Japan's history. So you could say with the inclusion of those two distance, though the significance reduces a bit, but the general the coefficient and the pattern are quite consistent with my mean results. And another robustness test I consider is the measurement error. I also use the number of pioneers as the measurement. So you could see that in this panel, the dependent variable is the number of pioneers, but with the log, you can see that the effects are consistent with my mean results. There could be another concern. The concern is those pioneers, when they come back, whether they came back to their hometown, though normal theoretically they should have came back to their hometown to diffuse the mechanized or silk raiding techniques. But we don't have the data. So to address these kind of concerns, I just conducted a kind of a simulation. The simulation is lighter. Let me introduce this. For those municipality without the with the presence of those female pioneers, so I misclassified those municipality as without. So I just treated the treatments. So only when I mistreated more than half of the treatment sample, the effect will become disappear. So this kind of simulations just show the resilience of the stability of my main results. You could see that this graph just shows the coefficient of the of a pioneer presences. You could see after I mistreated more than 50%, 50 municipalities, the coefficient will experiences the large inflations, and the p-value will increases over jump to over 0.1 10%. And there are another concern because the mean outcome variable is in the year of 1920, but in the 1920, Japan's economic conditions was directed tied to with the economic boom after First World War, and also the rise of silk demand in the USA. So to address this kind of concern, I conducted a resilient tests in the 1930. 1930 was just 1 year directly after the Great Depression. So this created a very large shock to the Japan's silk industries. So compared with, I want to mention a point. Compared with the 1930, the female labor force participation ratio in all four sectors in municipality, in two groups of municipalities, with and without pioneers, were lower with its 1920 level. But something surprisingly, you could see that the magnitude for industrial and service and all total economic was much larger when the effect in terms of the 1920. This was due to reasons the female labor force participation ratio in those municipalities without female pioneers reduced much more. So this is just to show the explanation for this increases of a magnitude is likely resilience of female labor force workforces in those municipality with female pioneer presences. And another concern is the sample selections. Just as I introduced before, due to the data limitation, I think I just can only focus on 3 historical prefectures in Japan. So this might raise of a sample selection problem. So to address this problem, I utilizes the data at the prefecture level, but here around the whole country, whole Japan, now, because although I can hold carefully hold Japan, but now the observation unit is a prefecture, so I just have the aggregated data. So here is the results. You could say, although the significance level were much lower compared with the my main results, but the general, like the patterns were quite consistent, because the increase in industrial and the surface and the total economy. Next part, let me to introduce the mechanisms behind this short-term effect in inferences. So the first very direct reason mechanisms is that when those pioneers, when they came back to their hometown, they could contributed to the establishment of mechanized silk reeling factories. So this table just testify these mechanisms. In column 1, the dependent variable is the number of mechanized silk reeling factories. In 1920, you could see that in this municipality, with the presence of pioneer female industrial pioneers, you can see the effect of a presence is significant. And in the color 3, the dependent variable is the proportion of a female population who engaged in the silk reeling work. You could see that the coefficient of a female pioneer presence is significant and much more significant at 1% level and say and positive. So this directly shows the existence of the silk channel, the knowledge diffusion channel. But how much does this kind of a channel explain that my observed effect in the industrial and the surveys and also other sectors, and let's say in like panel to adjust do a meditation analysis, I just included this variable, the silk female labor force participation ratio into the regressions. You could see that when I include in column 4, you could see that when I included this variable into regressions, the effect of pioneer presence or industrial was disappeared all. But for the surface, I mean, you could see that the effect of the pioneer presence still exists there. So this may suggest for a nanomechanisms. So here I would just recall, because as I introduced, there could be served as low model factors, low model. So this kind of effect may attributed to their low modeling. Specifically, for those surfaces works, there are a category of work called the public surface and the professional freelancers. This kind of work included more occupations requiring more human capital, like the public servants and the teachers and also lawyers and some like some freelancers. This kind of work require more like aspirations. So you could see that the effect for this kind of category jobs when I controlling for the silk channels still remain positive and more significant. So this may indirectly suggest for the low modeling effect. So after I testified of impact in 1920, I also testify a long-term effect. So the reason why I did this kind of a long-term analysis is because it's like in 1920, the female labor force participation ratio in Japan was relatively high compared to other Western countries like the USA and the UK. But when the year come to 2000 year, the female labor force participation of all gender equality in Japan was relatively low compared with other OECD countries. So this was a largely this mainly due to like due to a reason of like after the 1930, the greater so this may raises a fair questions whether those female pioneers influences can persist to today, but it seems very unlikely due to two reasons. The first reason is like the Great Depressions collapsed the silk industries, and the second reason is like the post-World War Japan's economy was largely centered on healthy industries, and the post-war the economic models was male breadwinner models, and the institutional and the employment practices largely emphasize the male as the householder. So I think a very encapsulating statement, all of the phrases can describe the situations of women's situations in post-World War Japan, just like a good wife and a wise mother. So this reinforces the traditional gender norms. So I just testify in this paper, I just testify the long-term impact of female pioneers in 2000. And the color one, the dependent variable is just the share of a female over 15 years old engaged in non-home works. So it's a direct testify the effect to pulling women out from their home. You could say that the effect is positive and significant. And then in the column 2, the dependent variable is overall female labor force participation in 2000 year. And in the column 3 and the column 6, the dependent variable is the share of a married woman engaged in working primary to working, and column 4 is working beside housework, and the column 5 is primary doing houseworking, just housework, house affairs, and the column 3 is the working, that's the aggregate variable. You could see that indeed, in those places and municipalities with the presence of historical pioneers, those married women were more likely to engage in doing working rather than doing just staying at home as the housewife. So this increased the woman engagement in economic productions, result in the reduces in the birth ratio, just in column 7, and also marriage ratio in column 8. To explain this long-term impact, I just mainly attribute it to the shifting of the gender attitudes, because I just analyzed the long-term impact on gender norms using Japan general social survey data in 1920. So the Japan's general social data, just like I use 3 questions. Those 3 questions, each just here. The first question is like a statement. If a husband have a sufficient income, it is better for his wife not to have a job. The correspondent to the question should to give their view in for this statement. Here are 4 statements. The first statement is like they agree with 1, and 2 somewhat agree, 3 somewhat disagree, so 4 disagree. So this means that the higher value means more likely to disagree this traditional statement and representing more progressive gender attitudes towards this statement. And the second statement is that a husband's job is to earn money, a wife's job is to look after the home and the family. Is still quite a traditional gender field. And the column 4 and the column 6, the statement is like, without a doubt, a woman's happiness is lying in marriage is still quite the traditional norms. You could see that in those regions, here the analysis in region, if those individuals exposed more to historical influences of those pioneers, they are more likely to disagree with those traditional norms questions. So this more directly to give present evidence in terms of the shifting of gender norms and also the mechanisms of low models, as I argued before. So that's the mechanisms in the long run. And now I have covered all of the main part of this research work. And thank you very much for your listening, and please raise questions and give comments if you have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Xinxian, for the very interesting presentation. So may I remind our audience again, if you have any questions, please just drop your questions in the Q&A box. So welcome Professor Setsu to share his thoughts and reflections on Xinxian's paper. Professor Setsu, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, it works. Yes, I will share my slide. Just a minute, please. Oops. Just a minute, please. Okay. And which one? Can you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, thank you very much for having me this time. Yes, I'm Toki Setsu from Sashi University in Tokyo, and I really glad to hear the presentation, and I'm very glad to have a chance to read this paper. This paper is quite interesting for me, and it's yeah, I could understand that the Mr. Li elaborated and painstaking to make a very huge data set to explain his hypothesis, and it was impressive very much. But I'd like to give some concerns about on your paper. I mean, and main concerns are two concerns I have. So first one is oops. Interpretation of female labor force participation ratio, FPR. In this paper, you assume that the higher labor participation ratio is better or modernize the situation in the region or municipality. But I'm not sure it's true or not, because in the historical perspective, Japanese FLFPL is declining over time, and it was because of diffusion of compulsory education or diffusion of idea of modern family model. And if now we just focus on diffuse education issues, if the region had a high FLFBO, it suggests that the low educational attainment for female. This is no good situation, and it's not modernized at all. It's quite opposite to your assumption. And the second point is Douglas Aristo's law. Now, I think this is not so common in international scholars. I think this terminology is used in only Japanese scholar, and but the law is quite simple. If household income was low, female supply their labor, increase their labor supply of labor force, labor supply, and to compensate the household income. And second point is the wage for female labor was high. Female try to increase their labor supply. Now, the Douglas Arthur's law consists of these two parts. So if that is the case, if some region had a high FLFBO, it suggests that the kind of backwardness of the regional economy. It implies that they had a lower household income than other places. So this is also contradicted to your assumption. So I think you need to clear or you need more careful explanation about the meaning or interpretation of female labor participation ratio. This is quite important. And the related to this issue, so I'd like to point it out that one possibility that when you show that map of the pioneers municipalities, it seems like there's a kind of concentration. I mean that in the case of Saitama Prefecture and Ilma Prefecture, the district or municipality is concentrated in western or northern part of Saitama or Ilma Prefecture. And I was also, I think that that area, western or northern part of Saitama, is relatively rural, I mean, and the southern part is urbanized. I was born in Saitama Prefecture, and of course from southern part, so I have an image that the especially northern part and western part of Saitama is very rural, and they might have a very high they might have a very high FLLP in 1920s, I think. So your IB estimates might capture these geographical gradation of FPL. So southern part is might have lower FPL because they were flourished and economically developed, but northern part or western part is relatively poorer, and they might have higher FLFPL. So this type of geographical gradation might affect your result. And this is my concern. In the case of Nagano, I think I have a image that northern part of Nagano is poorer than southern part because southern part have a Suwa or other very industrial district, but in the northern part they didn't have such kind of things. Maybe this might be some kind of biased opinion, but you need to check such kind of things. And second point is related to the initial condition. And as I told you, that FLFPR was high in early Meiji, especially in the Silk district. You didn't mention about that this material, but it gives a very important information to you. So I strongly recommend you should check this material that is Kainokuni Genzai ni Betsu Shirabe. This is a kind of pilot census conducted in 1879. It's very early period of Meiji. So this material provides occupational structure by district, and of course you can calculate FLFPR by district. And if you check it, you can see that the FPR in the Silk district, Yamanashi also had a Kainokuni means Yamanashi prefecture. It's next to the Saitama and Nagano, and in the Silk district of Yamanashi prefecture had very high FPR. So this is quite contradicted to your assumption. You said that you can assume that the in the initial conditions there is no female labor workforce working in factory or mills. So this is a little bit it sounds a little bit strange, but actually so many female worked in this sector. They didn't work in mill or factory, but they worked in maybe they might work in the home or domestically. But you shouldn't ignore these kinds of things. I'll put the URL. I'm not sure you can read this material from abroad. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
but
I can access to this material.
Okay.
Okay,
Very
thanks.
good. Yeah. Okay. And related to this point, yeah, what is the difference between walking outside and domestically? Was walking outside really rare in the early Meiji's? Yeah, I don't have clear evidence about this, but anecdotal, and I've ever heard that some kind of anecdotal evidence about domestic servant at the period. So many female labor force moved into the into the city, like Edo, and they worked as a domestic servant. And you also mentioned that some kind of gender norm in the early Meiji's, and you said that the female should be in the house and work at home or something like that. But that kind of that kind of thought will be shared by the samurai family, maybe, but not for the normal, I mean, normal people or peasants or I'm not sure for merchant or other sectors, but at least for the peasants, it's not common idea. So many female labor moved and worked, maybe. I don't have clear evidence, so please check it. So, and they are the main issues I'd like to put on, and other than some relatively minor suggestions and questions. Do I have a time, or should I?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, okay, yeah, I will finish in 5 minutes, and
No worries. Take your
oh,
time.
thank you. And I think if you, yeah, I'd like to look at the map showing regional variation FLFPR. It could be quite helpful to understand the variation of regional FLFPR. So yes, I can check that my assumption is right or not. So I mean that southern part of Saitama prefecture might have lower labor participation, in comparison to the northern part or something like that. It could be quite helpful. And second point is by-employment should be considered. And yeah, the population census in 1920 provides so many rich information about by employment. I mean that the secondary job. So if you'd like to know that labor participation ratio for an industry, you need to consider the working in that section as a secondary job. I mean that a female might work as working in the agriculture sector, but she might work in a factory and in spare time. So they should be counted as a workforce in the industry sector. So, but I'm not sure the census provide that information by municipality level. You can get, I'm not sure. Please check it. If you can use it, you should include this data into your research. And finally, this is the final one. No, not the final one. The third one is how to calculate agriculture's suitability. You mentioned about you created this variables, but there is no explanation. How did you do that? It's quite interesting variable to think about regional situation. So if you can, please share the knowledge or methodology to create these variables. And you when you're explaining about robustness check, you said that you created some kind of proxy of economic conditions. Yeah, it looks it's national GDP, national level GDP divided into the district level or something like that. I think that's no good. That's no good. And so I think instead of that, I think you should use labor force share of primary industry. It could be a better proxy of the economic condition. And actually, I use this variable to make some estimate. It worked very well. So I'm not sure it is useful for you too, but it is worth trying to put in your estimates. And finally, this is a quite very actually minor question or estimate, minor question, but you use two SLS model or IV model to calculate the FLFPR, but first order, first stage, first stage regression was conducted using OLS, but actually in this case, the explanatory variable is dichotomy, I mean dummy variable. So this is quite primary question, but I thought that you should use our logit or probit to calculate fast stage regression. Does it make sense? That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Setsu. So, Xinxian, do you want to
I just
very briefly respond to Professor?
Yes, I just add
yeah.
a bit of a brief responses to Professor the comments, and the professors that mentioned like the relationship between the education and the female labor force participations. I think at least if data permits, I think up to now, I just found it quite difficult to find like quite the very granular data at a municipality level data in 1920, but in the long run, probably I could add the effect of education. I think I could have at least a try. And in terms of the relationship between like the economic development and the female labor force participation engagement, I think I need to think about less because how to argue it. It seems like in Japan's cases, it seems like a slightly different. I need to consider more about license. And okay, and one more point I want to address is like Professor Sitz mentioned like what is the differences between the working within homes and the working outside. And I think this is the key point. Like my list my paper want to sell to the audiences. So I think the key point, but indeed, like the because the majority of those quite a lot of those first cohort industrial workers, they are come from the samurai family. So those kind of social constraints on them were quite bonding. Yeah, this kind of but for the peasant families, they indeed in the Edo period, Tokugawa period, there are quite a lot of also doing do some like agriculture productions, but usually, and also we have a sorry, the migrant of a worker to Tokyo to do some like house servants. They are also common, but in the later versions, I would more like emphasize the differences between the factory work and also the those the work in the domestic spheres. I think I should mention much more. Yeah, and thank you for, and also Professor says mention other very practical and comments that are very helpful. And I would like to contact you after for more discussions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Setsu, and also Xinxian. So maybe now we could just move to our Q&A session here. So first question is from Professor Yuan Wei Peng, and he asked that the first question he asked is how did the early female pioneers of Japan's modernization differ from ordinary women in terms of family cultural background, especially in religious aspects? And the second question is that Japanese women at the beginning of the Meiji era were constrained by old cultural concepts. Did women in Japan's old era have the custom of foot bindings similar to Chinese women, and foot binding among Chinese women may have been even more detrimental to their employment outside their home?
I think for this question is quite interesting, but for the foot binding, I think Japan has no this kind of practice. No,
Oh, no,
No,
foot
and they
binding.
have no
no,
foot
no,
binding
no,
practice.
no,
But
yeah.
Professor says, does Japan have like quite a similar practices like could be detrimental to women's health? Probably if I could explore it better to see if such a practice existed. But for foot binding, I think no. And for
No.
your
Mm.
first question is like early female ordinary in terms of a family, especially in religious aspects. For religion, I have no idea about this, but I think as we have already discussed, but for people from this different social social structure, like the samurai family and also the lower the peasant families, and the culture, all of the norms are quite different. I'm not sure if this could answer your question.
So they are more modernized just for the samurai families.
There should be more confinement or constraint or some life family.
Okay. And the second question is from Professor Mitch, and he asked that he said that the focus of your paper is the silk industry. Japan was also known for early FLFP in cotton textile manufacture. Could you comment on how your findings relate to the role of FLFP in cotton textiles in Japan, and also in cotton textiles? FLFP was concentrated in females in late teens and early 20s prior to marriage. Working in the factories provided a means for women to obtain a dowry for marriage. In the silk industry, to what extent was female labor force participation confined to younger single women prior to marriage?
I think they should be because I didn't explore too much in terms of the cotton industry, but in terms of like the worker structure and also their ages, they are quite similar as I think. And besides there could be a bit of a difference in terms of like cotton industry, because cotton industry, the first setting is like the biggest one is from the Osaka, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Osaka, but later is one private. But here, the silk industry is but started with the state-led modernization driver. This is something contrasted, different with the later period of female in the cotton industry. Even in the later period of textile industry, I think the cases of Tomioka Silk Mill was still was real, because in the later period, the situations, the female situations got worse.
Okay.
Okay.
And I actually have another question for you, Xinxian. I'm just
Okay.
wondering, what's the role that government played in your story, and if in some local governments, if they are very active in just to increase their female labor force participation, would they have some different types of policy? Maybe it's different from another prefecture or area.
Yeah. I think it's for specific historical context, if the government want to promote the female labor force participation, then that's largely the reason due to that they want to develop it, largely as the result of developing specific silk industry, as I think largely due to the results not I don't think they have a very like a specific purpose of I need to increase as the female labor force participation, but as a result of promoting silk industry.
Okay, so it's like a side effect of the early modernization. Okay.
See.
So Professor Setsu, do you have any other more further comments or?
Nope.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess that brings us to if there's no more other questions, I guess that's just brings us to the end of our presentation today. So a big thank you again to Xinxian and also to Professor Setsu joining us today, and to just to have a very, very interesting presentation and also engaging discussion today. And before we wrap up, I also want to remind our audience that for our next seminar, next webinar next month, on 13th of November at the same time, 4 o'clock, that we will have Dr. Ying Dai from the Institute of Population and Labor Economics at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and she will present her new work on the spousal occupation structures in the 20th century Yangtze Valley. And Dr. Dai also just received the best dissertation prize at the World Economic History Congress at Lund. So we are also very happy to have her joining us next week. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you Professor Setsu and Xinxian. Okay, see you next time. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you, and 再见。